Okay.
Awesome. Awesome. So you doing okay? Everything's going okay?
Yep, going good. Uh,
Awesome.
year's ending up a couple more weeks. Yeah, yeah.
Awesome.
But uh,
This is great. How long have you been doing the genealogy stuff for?
it actually was a fourth grade project that never ended. Um,
Really? Hey, that's cool.
yeah, so I've just kept going and then wanted to do others. Um,
That's wonderful.
so let me share my screen.
Perfect.
Okay, ooh, that's a lot of tabs. Okay. Okay, share screen. There it is. Okay. So you should see the Fenner family.
Yes, I do. Great.
Okay. So the first, I always start with just a simple family tree. So we're doing your paternal line. So
Perfect.
let me click. There we go. So we got you there at the bottom.
Hmm, that's me.
Go, yep. And we go up to you all the way to your sixth great grandfather. That's where I,
All right, check that out. That
yeah.
is amazing. Man, whoa,
So
Felty's real name was Valentine? That is
yeah,
cool. I've
Felt,
never
isn't that a great name? Felty.
Oh, it's such a good one. Felty Fenner. I've heard the name before, but that's amazing. All the way before him, too. Stephen Fenner. Holy moly, check that out. This is so cool.
Very interesting characters. So we're gonna go start from the oldest and go forward.
That sounds great.
So the first, so Stephen Fenner and Eleanor Dorsey. He was born in about 1740,
Okay.
likely in Pennsylvania or Maryland. He married Eleanor in about 1764,
Okay.
and they had at least 11 children,
Whoa. All right.
probably more. Those are 11 that survived
Okay.
to adulthood or
Great
relative
Grandpa
adulthood.
Stephen putting it down. All right.
um, so this record that we're looking at right here is the muster roll
Okay.
for Captain Richard Dorsey's artillery company, the Continental Army, 1778.
Uh-huh.
And it's very hard to read. All these, a lot of these documents I'm looking at
Uh-huh.
are scanned from microfilm
Sure. Okay.
that was done like the 60s and 70s. So they're not
Gotcha.
the best quality, but
But still.
you can almost right here.
Oh
Can you see
yeah.
my? Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
they were spelling it as fennel on some documents.
Look at that. That's interesting.
Uh,
Fennel.
and I don't know if you can read what his rank is above here.
Moon fries.
It's a matros, which was a rank below gunner.
Okay.
Um, so his main role would have been to assist the gunners
Mhm.
in loading, sponging, and firing the cannons.
Whoa.
But under his name,
Uh,
or some next to his name somewhere, it says under guard, which indicates that he was guarding the artillery equipment. That was his role.
okay.
Um,
Wow.
and he appears on this regiment's muster rolls until May,
Okay.
when they were stationed at Valley Forge. Um, and that
Hey, how I'm
same
from
month,
the Valley Forge.
I grew up right near Valley Forge, so we know Valley
oh,
Forge.
okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's neat. Well, he was there in May 1778, and that same month, General George Washington was there and
Mhm.
received word that France would ally with the U.S. and kind of turn things up for the war.
Cool.
Um, so here I found this engraving or this drawing on it's a powder horn drawing, and
Uh,
this guy right here with the I don't know the official term,
sure.
but this would have been Stephen's role.
Okay.
Um,
The cannon
very
jam.
back. Yeah, take care of the artillery guarding it. Um, and he only appears on 3 months muster roll, but it wouldn't have been uncommon for farmers to be in the army 3 months, go home, plant the fields, stay a bit, and then go back.
Okay.
So he very well could have gone back in a different company.
Okay.
And even though, so you probably heard that he's in Captain Dorsey's regiment and his wife was Eleanor Dorsey.
Okay.
So
Huh.
my first assumption, oh, related, right? Well,
Yeah.
there is no evidence that they are related.
Hmm.
There's a 1972 article that states Eleanor was born in Scotland, that she was orphaned very young,
Okay.
went to live with an uncle who was very unkind to her, and she fled to America where she met and married Stephen Fenner.
Wow.
Oh,
But there are no sources to support that. But on the other end, there are no sources to support that she was Eleanor Dorsey of the Maryland Dorsey family, a very
Yeah.
large, very wealthy family that Richard Dorsey came from. He
Okay.
did have a sister, Eleanor, but her life is pretty well documented. You know, when she married, who she married, when she died.
Okay.
But on a lot of these trees on Ancestry, they've merged these two Eleanor Dorseys.
Ah, okay. Interesting.
So it's a weird thing where it's like she's married to two men having children at the same time. No, they're separate people.
Okay.
interesting. Yeah.
I think she was born in Scotland and came to America because
Can you plug this into?
it's the only one that makes sense.
Okay. So we shouldn't be
Um,
expecting any old money from Maryland to start flowing in.
Unfortunately, not. Um,
Too bad.
but um, okay, let's see. What slide is this? Okay.
Matt, this is incredible
Okay,
already.
so well, let me see how many there are. I think that goes to slide 82.
Holy moly.
Oh,
85, 85. Sorry, 94. 94. Um, but I can also do it in sections if you're busy or anything. But
Sure.
so what Stephen did after the war is not clear.
Okay.
We're in 1783. He shows up 5 years later, living in Bedford County, Pennsylvania,
Okay.
Hopewell Township. Here he is on a tax record.
Huh.
And by this point, they had 6 children,
Okay.
and that's in about how many years of marriage? About 18 years of marriage. So let's see. So 1788, he has 160 acres of land,
Okay.
ooh.
but that sounds pretty good. But if we look at how much the land is worth, it's worth $50, which says he's probably not been there long. He has not
Okay.
cleared most of the land.
I see. Okay.
He's still getting on his feet.
You got this.
Okay, and he had 1 horse and 2 oxen or horned cattle.
Okay.
Kind of was off. And then 4 years later, he's in Union Township, Huntingdon County, Pennsylvania. 150 acres, 1 horse, 2 cattle, same thing,
Okay.
worth $50.10. So he's got a 10-cent increase.
So
Um,
That's how the
firmly,
Fenners make money right there.
firmly
Yeah.
middle class, in other words.
At this point, yes, very much. Okay, so now we get to the first US Census. Oh wait, actually, no, we don't. Okay, I think I got a slide mixed up. Yes.
That's okay.
First US Census, 1790, Huntingdon County, December 17th. Here his name is.
Bendel.
Women would not be recorded until the 1850 census, by name
Yeah.
at least.
Mhm.
So those numbers are how many people are in his household.
I see. Okay.
So Do you see? So you can see here on this end. Where is he? He is right here. Do you see
Uh-huh.
anything unique in one of the columns
Yeah, he
that
has.
none of his neighbors?
Yeah, he has like a mark in that last column. Yeah.
He does, and it's an unfortunate thing.
Oh no.
No.
He did own a slave,
Oh
one
wow.
slave, um,
Shit.
only one in his neighbor, his only one in the whole township at this point.
Oh god.
Oh no.
Um,
Jim.
so he was doing well financially. That tells us in a weird,
Hmm.
like, oh, good, but you know,
Yeah.
um,
Not the best news.
it's not the best, but we do know that 5 years later, in a unique tax record, he still owned one slave. But by the time he dies in 1800, that's whoever, I don't know the name of the slave, so whoever that slave was emancipated at that.
Okay.
Good. That's good.
There was no sale. There was because that
Okay.
would have been recorded.
Okay.
Um, um, and
Rough.
okay. Oh yes, and this is and the reason is that, but so the slave in 1790 was probably, if I had to guess, in their 20s because um, there was a law in 1780, the first of its kind in the country, Pennsylvania passed, that meant that any children born to enslaved women after 1780 would be set free
Mhm.
by the time they were 18.
Okay.
So say that child was born 1780, but by 1800, Stephen does not own any slaves. So that child was probably emancipated.
Mhm.
And this was the first law of its kind. So in 1795, when he still owns a slave, say the slave, I don't know, even know their gender, is 15, there were just 3,000 slaves in Pennsylvania compared to 10,000
Uh-huh.
freedmen.
Okay.
Yeah. By the end, by 1800, that number was halved, and by 1805, it was non-existent, really, in Pennsylvania.
Interesting.
Um,
Go Quakers.
so this, I'll go back. This is a land grant.
Okay.
So he had land. So he was doing well. He got on his feet
Okay.
after the war. I think he got on his feet because he got this land grant from his service in the army.
Mhm.
He was given 78 acres of land that was next to land he already owned. Um, so this, yeah, so this is, so he owned land in Huntington County, and
Okay.
then he also owned land in Bedford County.
Okay.
So he was doing, by the time he passed, he was doing okay. Um, much better than other wills I've seen at the same time.
Interesting.
Okay, so then we go here, and I have his last will and testament that he wrote December the 1st, 1799. He was only 59 years old. He writes that he is very sick and weak in body, but of sound memory, mind, and understanding. Blessed be God for the same.
Hmm.
And he leaves several bequests to his very large family. I don't know when he died exactly, but the will went into probate in early January. He writes the will December. He probably dies end of December, if I had to guess,
Okay.
if not early January. Most sources say early January. I don't think things move that quickly. I would say end of December.
Okay.
And then, yeah. So starting with his wife, he leaves her 38 pounds. Even though we are no longer colonies, they still used pounds for a good 2 decades, I think.
Okay.
Even though if you talked about pounds to someone in England, it was not the same equivalency.
Oh, okay.
But so 38 pounds. Her choice of horse and cow, which is
Nice.
generous. To his daughter, Barbara, he leaves her one cow and a calf, two sheep, and the bed she is sleeping on and all the bedding,
Oh, okay.
which is pretty normal for to leave the bed and bedding. I've seen that a lot. And then to his daughters, Eleanor, Elizabeth, and his son, Felty, who is your fifth great grandfather,
Okay.
who is at this point, he's young. Can't remember off the top of my head, but he's a young man.
Okay.
He leaves them only 2 shillings 6 pence
Oh man, Felty got screwed.
to those three children. Now, I wanted to know, like, what does this mean, colonial America, circa 1800? What could that buy you? It could buy you a young pig or
Okay.
a pound of candles.
Okay.
Okay,
So,
that's not a
it,
lot.
so it's not like what he left to his daughter Barbara or his wife, and it's certainly not what he leaves his son John. He leaves him 195 acres of land that he owns in Berkeley County, Virginia, as well as a sow with pigs. So I think he played favorites. So what we
Okay.
also learn is that he owns land in Virginia, which is actually where he the family lived part of the time. Some kids were born in Virginia, some in Pennsylvania.
Uh-huh.
So they went back and forth. Um, so he owns land in 3 counties across 2 states. He's still middle class, but he owns a lot of land.
Okay.
Best land, but a lot of land.
Uh-huh.
And then to his other son James, 180 acres, as well as a colt that was born the spring before.
Okay.
His daughter Sarah, she gets a cow, a calf, and 2 sheep, and to his grandson, 5 pounds. And then he directs that all other property that is left be sold, and the money is divided between his wife and just 5 of his children. At this point, 8 are living.
Okay.
Felty was not mentioned in this division, so I don't know if there was a falling out. It wouldn't be uncommon. I've seen this before where it's
Uh-huh.
actually written explicitly that I leave to my son so and so $1 because he disobeyed me or something like that. And that is actually something that is still done if you don't want someone to contest the will by
Okay.
mentioning them and giving them basically nothing. They can't say that they were left out. They weren't left out.
Oh
They
wow.
got $1.
Oh,
Um,
That's wild.
so I
Yeah.
think that that 2 shillings 6 pence might have been
A little
you
bit.
know,
Fuck you, cash.
yeah, basically, like you're not, yeah. Um,
Interesting.
his wife, his wife, um, Eleanor lived another 33 years. She went out west, with her sons, um, and she lived to be 91. And this is her headstone in Ohio, which I'm sure you know is where the Fenners are.
Yep.
Were for most of the time.
Mhm.
So that is an old picture of the headstone. It's fallen over now and it's kind of grown over, but it's still there.
That's so cool.
Um,
Where in Ohio is that?
and it is in. It's actually confusing, and
Oh, don't worry about it then.
it's in Highland County.
Okay.
Yeah. Um, and okay, so that's his mark right here, Stephen's mark. He could not write. He probably could not read either. So that's his
oh,
special mark. If you couldn't read or write, some people did a triangle, some people did
Sure.
just an X. He made that one and used it on all legal documents as his unique signature.
Huh.
Is it common that they were in this time period that people just didn't know how to read and write back then?
Yeah, it would be very common. There were, of course, no public schools really. Um, and yeah, he probably could read his own name,
Mhm.
but just never learned to write. His children probably did get to learn to read and write. Probably his sons, probably not his daughters.
Mm.
Um,
It's got to be hard to learn how to read and write when they keep spelling your name 5 different ways.
yeah, right. Fendel, Fennel, yeah,
Fendel, Fen, crack.
doesn't even know. Yeah. But now we go to Felty
Okay.
Valentine. So this is a lot of right. You don't have to read this. I'm gonna read an abridged version, and I'll send this to you. You could read the details, but I
Okay.
go over everything that's written. He's born 1770 in was then Frederick County, later became Berkeley County 2 years later, colony of Virginia.
Okay.
Um, and that should say 11 children. I kept finding more. Um,
Okay.
um, so he, okay, so Felty marries Nancy Ann Williams in 1793, and like his parents, they also had at least 11 children from in um,
Okay.
probably more. You can see some gaps that would make sense, like between Elizabeth and Alan. There's 4 years, and then there's five, um, or were miscarriages of some kind.
Okay, sure.
Um, Probably none between Stephen and Isaac and Eleanor, because that very
A little
rapid
too tight,
succession
yeah.
right there.
Sure.
Yeah. Then okay, so let me. So here is 1798 tax record. Looking back at Stephen, he is listed, and then 2 rows below is his son, Felty. And it's interesting. So it says he owns no land,
Hmm.
and he's not really being taxed. And he owns 1 horse and 1 cow.
Okay.
So what this is kind of suggesting is he's moving. He's in the middle of moving.
Oh, okay.
He's his he's yeah. So he is, and it falls in line with what I know. Um, and yes, because a few months later he appears in a census in the town of Hopewell, which we saw his father owns land in. Maybe he
Mhm.
went to that land, it's not clear. But it's about 30 miles from Union, so not very far.
Okay.
But then the second US Census, here he is in Hopewell,
Oh, wow.
Valentine now. Um, he small family, just husband, wife, 1 baby at this point. Another one probably born very shortly after. Um, and then I'm able to. So a lot of these
Oh,
tax records are not indexed, so it's going through the microfilm and looking for the names, which is really fun. Um, I actually once went through an entire census of Paris looking for a family, and it was over 2,000 images, and
Oh,
it was great. Um, it took me a week, but found what I was looking for. Um, so 1801, Felty owns 42 acres of land. A year later, 70 acres. He's doing what his father did, collecting more land, building on that. Um, and you can see under Valentine, John Fenner, that's his brother. They're neighbors now. Probably adjoining properties that would have been very common. Um, and so then we skip 10 years, 1811. Um, we have Valentine Fenner, and he has 100 acres of land.
nice.
Very good. Um,
Don't need your cash, Steven.
or actually 190 acres. Pardon me, 190 acres
Oh,
of
wow.
land. Doing good. 100 of those acres is cleared and usable.
I see. Okay.
His brother has 150 available acres. Oop. Um, and then the next year, so 1812, both their names are crossed off.
Hmm,
They're on the move again.
okay.
Hmm.
So they probably sold their property by the end of that year, so they would not have been paying any taxes for that year. So here they are in Bedford County, Pennsylvania, right at the
Mhm.
Maryland border. And they move to Highland County, Ohio, 400 miles. Ohio had been not colonized, but people had been moving to the Ohio Valley at that point for 40 years, 20 of which was kind of illegal. The British were like, you can't
Yep.
go past this line.
Proclamation of 1763.
Ah,
Yeah. So, but by 1800 and stuff, it was like I think there was like a Connecticut. It was called New Connecticut because a lot of Connecticut families moved over there in the early 1800s.
Okay.
My family included moved to
Oh, nice.
Ohio in 1809-ish. So yeah, so three brothers and their very large families. So we're talking about, and their mother, talking about close to 35, 40 people,
Mhm.
all go west 400 miles.
Wow.
And by 1814, I think up here, no, 1814, they all purchased plots of land. And 20 years after that, there's a 20-year gap. Um, Felty writes his last will. So this is not his hand, this is not the original. So when a will would go into probate, there'd be this
Oh,
huge book.
hang on one second, Matt. Hang on
Uh,
one second, sorry.
oh yeah.
My dogs are going nuts.
Oh no.
Here, I'll take here, give me one sec.
Sure.
All right, sorry about that, Matt.
No worries. Oh geez, it says the meeting will end in 10 minutes.
uh-oh.
Okay, well, if we call it, then we can schedule another time to keep debriefing.
Or
Or either way.
just create another one or schedule, yeah, whatever works. I can create
Either
another
one. Yeah, I
one.
don't know how much time you have.
I all the time tonight I
Okay.
do.
Okay, well, yeah, we'll if
So
it pops out, then we'll just email.
okay.
Cool.
Okay. Um, okay, where is it? Okay, so on June 11th, 1834, Felty wrote and published his last will and testament, witnessed by two of his neighbors. He would die 18 days later at the age of just 64.
I was gonna say his mom made it to 1 year before him, huh?
Yeah. That's right. Yeah, just 15 months before. Yeah.
Wow.
Um, so in his will, he leaves each of his children specific bequests, but majority of his estate goes to his wife, Nancy, to his eldest son, John, who is your fifth great grandfather. He leaves him, quote, one cow as soon as his mother can spare one.
Okay.
And then to his youngest daughter, Eleanor, he leaves her one mare, one cow, a saddle, and when she marries, the kitchen furniture as each of her sisters have received. So, like her dowry,
Okay.
like wedding gift. Um, um, Two of his other sons were given gray horses and a cow under one condition that they take care of their mother.
Aw.
Um, and they did. She died 5 years later, 1839. He was 66 years old. And so John, the one who got what was it, a cow as soon as his mother could spare one, your great grandfather. Oops, wrong.
Mhm. Oh, there we
Here
go.
he is. And he was born July 17th, 1795. And about 5 years after the family moved to Ohio, he married Nancy Berryman.
Okay.
Her mother was Nancy.
I was gonna say another Nancy.
Yeah, and he was 19 when his family went to Ohio. Um, and he and his wife had at least 8 children. And this is where I said it gets confusing. So you'll see um, they lived in Liberty Township, Highland County, Ohio, but they also went to live in Union Township, Ohio. Back in Pennsylvania, there was also Union Township.
Oh,
And
yeah.
then later on, they're going to move to Hopewell Township, Ohio. And there was Hopewell Township, Pennsylvania. So the Fenners like in those towns in
Yeah.
different states. Okay. So the 1850 census, here he is. Women are listed for the first time. There's his wife, Nancy. He's 49. And then there's their children. Jackson, your fourth great grandfather, is 18, farming with his father. Then Maria, 16, James, 14, and Johnson, 12. And his farm is worth $5,840, which is pretty good. He's doing really well. It's it's about double what his neighbors are making or have. Um, okay, and then fast forward just 10 years, 1860, that number doubles. Now worth $10,000. He's 63. You know they're doing well because they have a maid, domestic servant.
Oh, nice.
And but I guess they weren't doing all too well because he dies a year after that census was taken. Um, just a few months actually. He is 65. Um, his wife
How did you get
remarried.
a picture of that headstone?
So there's a website called Find a Grave where there's volunteers across the country that
Oh, wow.
go.
That's
And somebody took us, someone in Ohio.
unbelievable.
Yeah, it's
Cool.
a very valuable resource.
Yeah, really.
And his wife, Nancy, remarries 5 years later and dies 5 years after that. He was 70, dies 1871, and they were both buried in Dunn Chapel Cemetery in Willetsville, Ohio. There wasn't a lot of records on John, so that's why his is kind of shorter. Um, Ohio record availability is different than Pennsylvania. States vary on how nice they are and how much they want to give for free or even for paying. Um, so looking at fourth great grandfather Jackson now, born January 19th, 1831, the first in your Fenner line born in Ohio. He gets married in 1857, November the 19th, to Mary Irena Halstead. Spelled a few different ways, and this is their marriage uh, certificate from 1857. They all they wanted was the names and the date that was married, not much other useful information like ages or anything. Um, but it went through the probate courts at the time, interestingly. Um, and like his father, there's not a lot on Jackson, and that's kind of because he lived a relatively short life. He dies um, when he is just 47 years old. Um, here is his will. Um, um, he writes his will February 1878, dies 4 months later. Um, his wife, Mary, is just 37 years old, a widow with, let's see, how many children? 8 children? 8 children. Yeah, ranging from ages to 23 months, the youngest, to 19 years old. He was very young when she got married. Um, and so his will, it's not as interesting. Horses, family likes to give their children horses, I guess. Um, but one thing that we can get from this is that he leaves books in his estate, so he can read. That's a great hint that he can read. He's literate. Um, and let's see. Okay, so he actually did have an obituary published in the newspaper, which is very interesting. So he was a member of the Odd Fellows Lodge, a charitable fraternity. Great name. Um, and they paid tribute to him.
Uh-huh.
Here's a quote from it saying, "The order has lost a valuable member, the home circle, an affectionate and providing husband, a
Oh,
kind and indulgent father, and society an honest man."
That's good.
Sounds like a
Jack.
good guy.
Yeah, really. Oh God, that's such a
Um,
good 1800s name right there too. E.G. Boatwright.
yeah, it really, yeah. Um, and so yeah, these are other clippings that note his death. Um, his funeral had a large attendance, it says, proved the high regard in which he was held by the community.
I'm sorry.
Um,
Hang on a second. Oddfellows. So that's a fraternity. That's also in Pennsylvania, right? Do you know anything about that?
yeah,
It's all over the place.
national, yeah.
The Phoenixville.
Yeah, we saw that
Yeah,
in
there's
Phoenixville,
there's an
yeah.
Oddfellows building there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah. A lot of not. It's clear he was also part of the Masons,
Okay.
the Freemasons,
Nice.
because these three chains is a symbol for
I was gonna
each
say that
member.
looks like it's like a masonry thing, kind of. Yeah.
And interestingly, you can kind of tell that on top of the headstone, it's actually an open book,
Oh yeah.
Nice.
which is symbolic for his life was cut short. His story still had many more. And, okay.
Nice.
Okay.
So yes, open book, life cut short, many more pages to fill that were left blank.
Perfect.
Okay, so oops. 2 years later, his family is still living on the farm. This is the 1880 census. His wife, 39 years old. She has 4 kids at home,
Okay.
18, 15, 7, and 4. Um, her son, Albert, who is her third great grandfather.
Okay.
He is farming. He's keeping the family afloat while his younger siblings are at home and or at school.
Okay. Good job, Al.
Yep. Um, And then here's a map from 1887,
Oh, wow.
and you can see they're living here. Yep, Jackson Fenner heirs, 50 acres. But then over here, very close by, is Jackson's sister, her husband, Barton Dean.
Uh-huh.
And then over here is his other sister, her husband, Samuel Zink.
Samuel Zink, yep.
Over here is his brother, and over here is his other brother. So they were
Wow.
surrounded by family, um, very close, within a mile, 2 miles of all these farms. Um, but oh yeah, I think this has an interesting newspaper article, kind of funny. 1886. Mrs. Mary Fenner would not object in the least if the person who took meat from her smokehouse last Thursday night would be kind enough not to visit and make and said smokehouse anymore. So that would have been, they were doing comedy. They knew they were making fun of it. That wasn't a real request. Don't feel
Sure.
for me. I mean, it was, and but by 1904, so we're talking 26 years after Jackson passes,
Mm.
Mary goes and moves to live in urban Champaign County, Ohio, near her daughter Fanny and her family. 4 years after that, she moves to Columbus to live with your ancestor Albert, his
Okay.
family, and eventually to her daughter Nellie and her family, who were in Columbus as well.
Okay.
That would be very common for a widowed parent to go live with children. Sometimes even I've seen live with one children in their family in the winter, spring, and the fall, all different seasons.
That's a good idea, actually.
Yeah.
You don't
Yeah,
overburdened by, by your mother-in-law.
yeah. And so that could have been what was happening here. Um, he dies in Jersey Township in Licking, Ohio,
Okay.
of breast cancer
Oh,
and throat cancer. She had been suffering for 2 years. She was 84. Um, her son-in-law was the informant, so he got some information wrong. It was Halstead, not Halstone.
mm.
Um, he also got her date of birth off by a year. Um, but when she dies on March 26, 1925, she had outlived two of her sons,
Wow.
including your ancestor, unfortunately,
Mhm.
which I will move on to. This is
Wow.
Albert Fenner. I don't know what the M stood for right now. Um, could have been his grandmother's maiden name, McGowan. Could have been Mark or Matthew. Who knows? But he is born July 7th, 1861, in Union Township. His father dies when he's 17 years old. He remains on the farm, taking care of his mother and family until he's 33. So he waits a long time to get married for the first time, or relatively long for those times at least.
Mhm.
And when he does, December 5th, 1894, he marries Clara Wood, Claremont County, Ohio, daughter of James and Ruth McGowan Wood. And they moved to the capital, Columbus, Franklin County, Ohio, where he begins working at the Pennsylvania Railroad Company.
Hmm.
So here's their marriage license and certificate. Same, not asking a lot of questions. And here we see the 1900 census,
Mhm.
which lists Albert and Clara with their two children, Mary and George. George is your great grandfather.
Oh,
George Raymond, you might know him more by.
yep. Grandpa George.
Yeah. He was just 2 years old at the time, or one and a
Okay.
half. And 3 years later, they would have another son who lived just 4 years. Okay. So here is the where Albert would have worked. This is the car shop for the Pennsylvania Railroad Company. So he was a let's see, his occupation is listed as car inspector here. This would have been the area he worked. This is the actual one in Columbus.
Huh.
That time. He would have, and by car they do mean train cars.
Okay, yeah.
So he would have made sure that everything was on the up and up, because he started working manufacturing them,
Mhm.
promoted to inspector, which is pretty good.
Interesting.
So yeah, so this is the child that they have in 1904, born premature.
Oh, wow. This is infant Fenner. Didn't have a name.
So only lived 3 hours.
Oh, little guy.
They might have had more children before that.
Uh,
It would make sense because there was so many years in between.
sure.
And so just like his grandfather had, Albert's grandfather, and had in 1811, Albert relocated his family along with his brother-in-law and his cousin and their families in February 1907 to go to Tennessee. Went down to the west, a little west. So they move, but he's continuing to work on the railroad there. But just 4 months after the family moved, Clara gives birth to a son they named Joseph Clarence, and 8 days later, Clara dies.
Oh,
He was 36 years old, it seems. 34.
is that writing on the bottom? That is right on the bottom of the headstone. The stuff that
It
looks.
is. It's probably a Bible verse or a poem. It's
Okay.
too faded, unfortunately, now.
Sure.
Weathered. The baby that was born, Joseph, he would die 4 months later,
Oh,
August 1907. Albert leaves his children. So your grandfather was 9 years old at this time, so he leaves his children, his daughter Mary, who was about 11 or 12, leaves them with his brother-in-law James Wood and his family, and Albert goes back to Columbus
Okay.
to set up a home for them there. But before he gets out of Tennessee, he gets married for the second time.
Okay.
3 years later, in November 1910, he marries Nashville native Ms. Ermine Alfred, although her real name was Maggie by Ermine.
Mhm.
He marries her in Linsville, Giles County, Tennessee. I don't know how happy this marriage was because these are newspaper clippings of him saying that he's not responsible for any debts his wife.
oh no.
Oh my
So
God.
that's so he and it 4 years apart. So he's and it was in multiple issues. I only put the two. So
Interesting.
he's basically saying, I'm not paying for any of the debts my wife makes,
Yeah.
which is a bold thing to put in the newspaper.
Yeah.
But they were they remained married, living together. Must be an interesting relationship. Um, so then the family was in the paper a lot. Here's Ruth Fenner
Huh.
getting married, 1918. Okay. Yeah. So your great grandfather was one of the witnesses at the wedding, 20 years old at this time. And so a little more insight on Ermine, the stepmother. She was the president leader of the Columbus chapters of the Daughters of the Confederacy.
Ooh.
She, um, she was responsible for joining up smaller groups into one big group of the Daughters of the Confederacy in that area.
Okay.
And that there's other than that, she probably like stopped, I'm guessing, from the debt. And this, and not much is known about them. Following an unfortunate trend, Albert dies in today's standards somewhat young. He
Mhm.
was 62,
Okay.
dies at work.
Hmm.
You can see up here it says he died at the railroad shops
Oh yeah.
of organic heart disease. So heart probably just gave out. There was a heart attack or just and they knew he had a bad heart, so they probably didn't do an autopsy or anything.
Let's see.
It
Okay.
could have been a stroke. It could have been any
Gotcha.
sudden. There was no obituary found, kind of strangely.
Mhm.
And then here is his grave.
Can you go back one slide really quick?
Sure.
Down at the bottom in field 14, we have the informant. Is that
Yes,
Ernie Fenner, or what does that say?
Ermine. That's his wife.
Oh, Ermine is the name of the wife. Okay, okay, great.
Yeah, so that's the his wife. You can see he's listed as a foreman. So he at one point got promoted from inspector to foreman. So he was running the shop at that
Gotcha.
point.
And his wife was
So he
running.
did rather. There you go. Yeah, but you can see they are living at the same address. So
Oh, yeah.
they were, um, so here is his headstone. That was taken this summer, actually. Photo.
That is a
Now
very
his,
short little run to, yeah.
yeah, and his wife dies 2.5 years later.
Okay.
Um, her obituary is on the right. He dies of a nervous breakdown. It says he was only 56 years old.
Mhm.
Uh, and it kind of seems it doesn't say that it was caused by her husband's death, but it says she died following an illness due to a nervous breakdown. Her husband's death occurred about 2 years ago. It just seems connected the way that it's said in that way. Um, um, he was a member of the Democratic Women's Club. Um, not the same.
Yeah,
Not the
no,
same party.
yeah.
Not the same time. Yeah,
I saw that, and then I saw the Daughters of the American
Confederate.
Confederacy
But just to be
with
Yeah,
the Robert E. Lee chapter on the other side.
but just to
yeah.
be clear, Ermine is not
No,
related
she's a
by
step.
blood to you.
No,
Okay.
no. I did not find any of your ancestors fighting for the Confederacy.
Okay, good.
That's my family,
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
fortunately.
So yes, she's not blood related. She was the stepmother. I
Gotcha.
think the kids liked her because Ruth named her daughter's middle name was Ermine.
Oh, okay.
Which says something. Don't know what it says, but something.
Yeah, the third to last paragraph there. There's a J. Raymond Fenner. That's my name. I'm James Raymond Fenner.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. Yeah, that's a family name then.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
guess so.
Um,
This is so fascinating, Matt. Whoa,
oh,
you know that guy?
yes.
God, he looks so much like my dad and my grandpa. They look so similar.
That's him. Okay, did I skip one? Yes, I did. I skipped. Um,
There's a
okay,
period
here.
when he was holding the batting record at Ohio State University. Oh, you saw that? Okay.
You'll see.
Okay.
Um, he was okay. So he went by Ray.
Okay.
It seems a lot.
Okay.
Records. So I'm gonna call him George though,
Sure,
as
because
his son was Ray.
Yep.
Um, and it, yeah. Um, so when he returned to Ohio to live back with his father and stepmother. This is the house they lived in,
Oh.
167. So this side of the duplex, and it would
Oh.
have been a double family home.
Okay.
Wasn't converted later. This is it now, obviously. Um, they lived here for about 10 years.
Okay.
Um, from the time he was about 14 until he got married.
Okay.
His home. Okay. Here is his World War I draft card.
Whoa.
So he was described as a tall man with a medium build. And if you see the date, September 18th, 1918, it's a
Mhm.
great time to register.
Yeah.
The war ends.
I was gonna say, yeah, you got a couple weeks left.
Yeah. But he did actually serve in a different way.
Oh, really?
He served in the naval unit SAPC,
Hmm.
which is the Student Army Training Corps at Ohio State.
Oh, yeah, there he is. There's his name.
Yep, and so they would have learned things like aircraft design, maintenance, and aerial photography.
Okay.
So not fighting as much, but the more behind the scenes stuff.
Econ.
Sort of like his ancestor who took care of the artillery. He was
Yeah,
learning how to
sure.
take care of military equipment
Okay.
many years later. Okay, so this is a roster that would be published about Ohio residents who served in some way, World War One, 1 year for the U.S. Stayed a little longer. So you see this right here. It says lack of funds.
Mm-hmm.
Why he was honorably discharged. He actually had to leave school, which in turn meant he could not be in the Student Army Training Corps because he would not be a student. However, he withdrew in 1918, but returned a year later. And as you mentioned, baseball.
Yeah, look
A
at
lot
that.
of paper articles, not just the college papers, but the Columbus local papers. Shortstop. I don't know anything about baseball.
Okay.
This may mean a lot more to you. Um,
We don't care for baseball either.
yeah, I think he's doing well because he 1,259 points. He's
Yeah, look
doing
at
great.
that.
Then is this the one with the picture? Yes. All
Oh,
right.
Wow.
There he is. This is and then what's written in the corner here? This was written on like an Ohio baseball player Hall of Fame website, just a website, not the literal Hall of Fame.
Mhm.
A website. Somebody wrote that up about him.
That's really cool.
But he was really busy. He was captain of the baseball team and president of his Ohio State senior class.
Wow.
So, yeah. And that great early photoshopping that's happening here
Yeah, look at that.
puts that back. They loved to do that back then.
That's really
Painted backgrounds. Okay, so this one. So here he is when he graduates.
wow. He really looks just
So
like.
senior class,
I guess we
senior
look.
class president, varsity O team, which was like the elite athletes were on that. Oakwood had a varsity O team back in the
Really?
30s and 20s.
Huh.
So this is O was for Ohio there, or O was for Oakwood here.
Gotcha.
He was in Alpha Kappa Sigma Delta Chi. He was in fraternities, different ones, same societies. And he got his bachelor's in science. Okay. And yeah, so still in the newspaper. Here he is in the center there with some great hair.
Yeah, look at that.
really just awesome. Now this is from the Ohio State archives. I found some of these, their college archives, and it is talking about the class day that they would be having. So as class president, he's in the middle. Um, uh, okay. He gets married to Florence Kathleen Marie, apparently a day early. As one article notes, they surprised their families as well as their friends by changing the date of their wedding from October 24th to October 23rd. Um, and they were, where does it say where they were married? They were married at, wasn't, oh yes, it was married at the Reverend's home. Um, okay. And here she is. It's a very difficult photo to see, but
Oh, look at that.
young society lady,
10.
1922. And let's see where. Okay. Finally, marriage records get more detailed by this time, and
Yeah, look at that.
you get a lot of information. He is working as an accountant. She is a stenographer. Um, they're living one street apart, so that's maybe how they met.
Okay.
Could have been they went to the same church or something like that. But remember, he's been living at that address for 10 years. Not
Mhm.
sure how long she's been living there, but they could have grown up together, possibly. They were the same age after all.
Right.
And that is their signatures. Their actual signatures are there.
Yeah.
Kind of forgot to cross her F. That would probably be the last time she signed using her maiden name.
That's right. Yeah.
I always think of that when I see marriage records. Probably the last time, as a signature at least. And let's, okay, so this is interesting. Oh, the 9 months after they married, well, 1 month after, oh no, 9 months after they married, just 1 month after George's father passes away, your grandfather is born. On August 28th, 1923.
Mhm.
Okay, so this news article from February 1923 is talking about, well, you can read it, but he's talking about getting signed onto like a minor league baseball team in West Virginia.
Mm.
But this doesn't happen. And if you think about the date, February, his wife might just be learning she's pregnant at this point.
Sure.
So he might not want to go to West Virginia now. She
Right.
might not want to go to West Virginia, leave her mother and siblings behind. So they don't go. He doesn't sign on to a baseball team again. Probably plays baseball at one point, but not in any official way that I can see.
Mhm.
Your grandfather's birth announcement in this hospital,
Aw.
Grant Hospital. Yeah, and year. So okay, yes, he does play. So and he does go to West Virginia. I forgot that he does go. Very short time after the child is born.
Okay.
Very short time, less than a year. As you can see, he expects to return to Columbus this fall to attend Ohio State football games, but he moves back. He doesn't stay in West Virginia long enough to even be recorded as a resident there.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And this is the home that they live in. So your
Okay.
grandfather lives in this house for the first few years of his life. A nice quaint house. The porch probably wasn't covered at the time, or it might have been, or if it was, it would have been screened.
Okay.
Sunroom. Okay. So in 1926, he gets his first promotion. So you might know he worked for the Pure Oil Company,
Okay.
and he works there for his entire working career. He works for this company. So he was already working there 5 years at this point, 1926, as an accountant's clerk. And he's promoted to special representative for the region. This ad is from that time. The company no longer exists. But if you look up the Pure Oil Company, Ohio, you'll see some of the locations. You can still tell that they used to be old Pure Oil Company gas stations because of the blue roof that was very popular and synonymous with the company. Okay, so I mean, if you compare this house with this house that they move in a year after his promotion, you can tell they're doing pretty good. Um, very nice house, very nice neighborhood, Upper Arlington, suburb of Columbus, 1960 Bedford Road. So they lived there for about 3 years. Here they are living their 1930 census. It says property worth 75. They were probably renting the house for $75 a month, which is still considerable. 1930, Great Depression, a few months in at this point. Hasn't really hit everyone yet, but it's coming. They have a pretty, they have 3 kids, and his sister-in-law is living there. She's working at the same company as a bookkeeper. That's kind of neat. And then they moved to this beautiful house
All right.
Oh,
for 1 year, but it just sold recently for over $1 million, actually.
All right.
oh my God.
That's incredible.
Really, a really nice house.
It is. Yeah, look at that.
But only 1 year, because they gotta go.
Huh.
This news article from August 1931 states the family is moving to Philadelphia.
Oh,
The last mention of Philadelphia, though.
oh,
Interesting.
Don't know if they really went, because by 1933 they are in Winnetka, Illinois, where one of their sons is born.
Really?
huh.
This is so weird.
But by 1937, the family is returning to Columbus when he's promoted to zone manager of the Columbus region. There he is in the paper. And it notes that they are moving into 2015 Tremont Ave in Upper Arlington.
Okay.
And they with the and this was in the newspaper, 1937, welcoming them back.
Oh my gosh. Is that your dad?
No.
Who
This is
is that?
1937. It's my grandfather.
But no, that guy looks like your dad.
Yeah, it's my grandfather probably. Or actually, this.
Yes, yeah, that's your grandfather.
Yep.
Let me see which one.
I'd say it's. Let's see. I don't know if it's not in the caption. Just going from the eyeballing, I would say it's either the taller guy with the little suit on, 1937, because my grandfather was born in 1923.
It's this guy. Yeah.
Is that guy? Okay, yeah, that's what I
But-
thought.
But his brother
That's
is the spitting image
Yeah.
of his dad at that age.
Yeah,
So
that's wild.
that's David Lee.
David
David Lee is my father's
Lee.
name.
Yeah.
Okay, so good that they look similar. But very attractive family here. Big. This was not just a tiny picture. You can tell by below. This was a big picture. Columbus welcomes them back.
Yeah.
And they're just all very smart. And they move in to this really lovely house, which they live in for 8 years and sell it in 1945 for $17,500, which is a lot of money.
Good number. Woman named Rahija. That's an interesting name for that era.
Oh,
I guess
yeah.
55, yeah.
Yeah. Yep, this home's still there, still very beautiful. And then, so he is 43, but he still has to register for the draft, World War
Mhm.
II. He was not going to be drafted. Um, but nonetheless, it gives some interesting statistics, 5'11 and a half. So
Yeah, these guys were all bigger than me.
190 pounds, scar on his right wrist. I guess he was so pale that they had to make a new section to say fair skin. Uh, I've not seen that before.
It's cool.
Uh, so this card, they kept one, and then he would have kept an identical one.
Okay.
They were tiny. They were the size of like a business card. I have my
Really?
great grandfather's, and it's really tiny.
Hmm.
Crazy.
I was surprised by it. So it could fit in your wallet, to show that you are registered, um, because every male had to register at 18. Still has to.
I'm loving the race options here. We have white, Negro, Oriental, Indian, which I'm assuming means Native American,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
Filipino.
Yeah. It's an interesting, yeah, it's surprising.
Yeah.
Not surprising and surprising.
Sure. Yeah.
But that's his signature there, G.R. Fenner. Um, and yeah, February 14, 1942. That's the date I think most men in his age group had to go. So I've seen a lot of draft cards with that date on there.
Mm.
Online, brothers would go with each other, fathers, sons to get their to get registered and hopefully not drafted.
Mhm.
Okay. So, not content with just working, he is elected in 1945 to the Central Hospital Service as a trustee.
Huh.
A few months later, in his job, he's promoted to a position in Chicago for coordinating marketing for that region. So the family is moving again. That's why they sold their house in November, because he got that promotion in October.
Wow.
So they go to Ohio. No, they go to Chicago. And this is the building he worked in. This was the Pure Oil Company building, still there.
Huh.
Um, it was the tallest building outside of New York City for one point,
Really?
Wow.
which is really, it's an impressive building. And so, yeah.
Wow.
In 1949, so they were only there for about 4 years, 3.5 years. They moved back, and this is the 1950 census, which was the first one that was mailed to people to fill out themselves. So this is probably his handwriting.
Okay.
Um, could be his wife's. I'm just guessing because it looks like my dad's handwriting that it's probably his handwriting. It looks more male to me. Um, so it lists everyone in the house: Norman,
Yep.
Marianne, David, John, Ronald. Um, okay. And he lists his profession as industrial and public relations in the petroleum industry, which sounds very official. Um, okay, so when they moved
So my
back,
grandfather's name isn't listed there just because he's moved out at that point.
he is actually, I think he's in college at this point.
Okay. All right.
I think he went, well, yeah, I think this would have been his first year in college.
Yeah, because he fought in the war. Um, and yeah, it may have been, yeah.
Yeah, I think he would have been away at college at this point. So when they moved back from Chicago, this is the house they built and lived in for the longest time. You know this house?
Yeah, I've seen that house before, yeah.
Okay, yep, they were
I've seen
there
pictures
30
of it,
years.
definitely, yeah.
Um, they got it pretty new. It was 8 years old when they bought it. And I was looking, I was like, it looks so kind of modern. I wonder if it's been redone. But
Yeah.
I was actually able to find the original newspaper listing, which
Huh.
shows the house in 1941. Pretty much the same.
I say it looks pretty similar, yeah.
Um, no big structures that are missing or added. So that was pretty neat to find that.
That is really neat.
So all right. So this shows 1951. Your great uncle, right?
Mhm.
Norman.
Yep.
Norman is getting married, and his sister Marianne are getting married. It's published the same day, side by side, announcing their engagements. They get married on different days, though. Your grandfather is the minister at both of their weddings. He marries his siblings.
That's really
Um,
cool.
I officiated my sister's wedding, so that's pretty cool. Okay, so this is weird. This was just weird that I thought to add. This is John Fenner, your great uncle John Fenner,
Oh yeah, yep.
future wife, for the Ohio State Gold Diggers prom. Little odd. It basically was swapping traditional gender roles for a day. She's helping him out of the car, as this very stage photo shows you.
She's a tridelt. Look at that.
Yeah, it's turn the tables, one night a year. Yeah, I just thought it was so odd. Why not show? Um, so back to George. These are from 1953, 56, and 57, highlighting his last few years at Pure Oil. They're just talking about things. He's chair of a committee, awarded a certificate, highly respected in his industry. So after this, outside of work, he served as president of the Franklin County Mental Health Association. 1957, you can see him in profile here. He spearheaded a campaign to get a bus for the state hospital that year. And it's really interesting. My great grandmother was a patient around this time at the Ohio State Hospital.
Oh wow.
A little earlier than this, but he was still involved in the association at that time.
Wow. Isn't it
So
weird that people
There's
cross
been so many
paths?
crazy crossings
Yeah.
in this so far.
yeah, it's a lot of when I did a friend's genealogy back in college, I found that her and another coworker were six cousins. So it's really a very small world we live in.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
Love it. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Yep. Let me get there. Okay. So then, yes. Next news articles. Little brush with politics here. Ohio politics, 1950s. There he is with the Columbus Mayo in 1952, claiming the week of October 12th with the Oil Progress Week. And then in 1959, as chairman of the executive committee for the Ohio Petroleum Council, he is presenting Ohio Governor Michael DeSalle with a special centennial-bound issue of the American Petroleum Institute quarterly newsletter.
Huh.
So
That's him. Wow, yeah, look at that. He's putting on the years, isn't he?
yeah. He's only 54 and then 60. People
Yeah,
look a lot older, I find back.
yeah. I remember seeing old videos and pictures of him, and he looked old. Like
Yeah.
he definitely put on the years pretty hard.
All the extracurriculars he did outside of work.
I was gonna say all the moving around too. It
Yeah.
takes a lot out
Uh,
to keep up that many boxes.
Yeah. Um, uh, okay, and then um, in 1957, the family experienced tragedy. Their son Norman died at the age of 32,
Yep.
Mhm.
drowning. This goes over everything. Friends give quote um, described by his wife and their two children. Um, Interestingly, I've not seen Jeffrey spelled that way besides my father.
Yeah,
Jennifer. Um,
that's
how my
interesting.
dad spells it. Uh, um, so yeah, just 32. And you can read through all the details.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, I've heard that story in detail. Very,
Yeah,
very sad night for all of them.
I'm
It-
sure.
all the brothers were on a boat together. And yeah, they got too close to the wake of a really big boat and it capsized their boat. And I think he was mangled by the propeller or something like that as well. So yeah,
Yeah,
pretty rough.
it's yeah,
Hmm.
definitely a tragedy. Um, but George, oh yeah, in addition to his involvement in local affairs, George was also national president of Ohio State University Alumni Association.
Oh
Pretty
wow.
cool. You can see sort of there is his wife. She used to also be a part of these events, host dinners, attend luncheons, lady luncheons, teas, bridge, things like
Yeah.
that. Um, okay. So the Ohio State Alumni Association was the second largest alumni organization in the country, which is impressive. Here he is in 1960. He's 61 at this point. Um, and I'm not exactly sure how long he was the national president. Definitely a year,
Hmm.
possibly two. Not here he is standing,
Oh yeah.
presenting homecoming queen, a trophy, the Alumni Association trophy. Um, it was the third largest crowd in the stadium history with 83,391 people there.
Holy shit.
Uh, Pretty impressive. Um, oh, okay, so in 1963, retires. 42 years working at the same company. That just doesn't really happen nowadays.
No.
Uh, um, and it kind of makes sense he retired when he did. Turned 65 that years. A lot of companies required mandatory retirement at 65.
Mhm.
Oakwood had that in the 60s as well. We had a math teacher who was at Oakwood for, as it happens, 42 years.
Uh,
And he had turned 65 2 years before he retired, but they did an exception for him because he was
okay.
so beloved by the students. And
Huh. I also like Huckleberry Hound right there. That's pretty great.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Um, okay, so
he
moving
really was
forward.
all sorts of clubs, wasn't he?
Oh yeah, yeah, a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Uh, and here's another thing he was involved in,
Hmm.
1967. You can sort of see it's kind of washed out. Here he is. Um, it was a program to help students of color get involved in local industry and encourage
Huh.
college attendance. It was through the First Community Church, but originally the idea was attributed to him. So that's why he was featured in
That's really neat.
and then there's a few articles. He wrote letters to the newspaper, his opinion on things. You can read them
Sure.
later when I send it. Then you can see this picture of them celebrating their 60th wedding anniversary.
Oh yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's what he did.
Um,
Yep, that was 10 days after I was born.
Oh, really? Oh, wow. Okay.
Yep.
So would you be the fourth of the
Yep.
great
I would be
grandchildren?
right there. Yep.
Uh, so big family. And they lived in this house here for the last 5 years of their life.
Oh, he downsized.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, it probably was easier to clean.
See, you can see how woke
And
we were this entire time. Look, in 1982, there's a Black Lives Matter poster right there.
they
Oh.
just knew, yeah,
I
That's
predicted it, yeah.
know.
Um, um, so just over a year after they celebrated 60th wedding anniversary, did celebrate 61. Florence died December 28th, 1983, at age
Hmm.
1. Just under 6 months later, George passes away at age 5.
His son and daughter-in-law, Ray, yep, and Carol and Walpole. Mm-hmm.
Yep. Talk about church membership. Doesn't say all the organizations he was in, but in both of their obituaries, instead of flowers, contributions to the Volunteer Services Council of the Central Psychiatric Hospital.
nice.
Um, and here are their graves beside one another. Um,
Wow.
okay, so lastly, just 10 slides more. Your
Yeah, there he
grandfather,
is.
see a resemblance. Um,
Yep, Ray.
um, so this is him graduating high school, 1941. At dramatics club, junior class play, football, and Boy Scouts. No baseball. But like his father, he's going to state. This is a newspaper article on how they celebrated grandfather's 20th birthday um, at that lovely home. It was held at the University Golf Club, um, and they invited the entire church.
Wow.
It says that he's stationed at Lowry Field in Denver, Colorado, and planning to enter the seminary.
Interesting.
Because we were always told that he was gonna be a doctor before
Oh,
Before he went and
went to
served,
the
and then
yeah.
he changed while he was over there to be in the ministry. That's interesting.
huh.
Wow.
Well,
Well.
he knew it in the back of his mind. Then yeah, or maybe he didn't tell them till that day. The newspaper article.
I think
Right.
Oh,
so. I think that yellow circle needs to move over one to the
Yeah.
right.
It's
yes, I just saw that. Yeah,
So no big deal, but yeah,
center,
there he
taller,
is.
nicer,
Yep.
nicer tie guy.
Yeah.
I
That's
think
really
this is.
nice. He looks like a young John Travolta there.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, it's pompadour hair.
Oh yeah.
Um, so this is his freshman year.
Mm.
Um, but he withdraws in 1943.
Mhm.
That's what this article says here. W43 withdrew.
Oh, I see.
But in 1945, he's in the military at this point. It just notes that he played a football game opposing Colonel Elliott Roosevelt's team,
So the recon
FDR's
ring.
son, who was in the military at the time. Kind of cool. Maybe he tackled the president's son.
That's really cool.
Um, and he did return in school in 1946. And in 1949, he gets married. Phyllis Jean,
Dean.
probably just Jean. She dropped Phyllis, it seems.
Yep.
He's 25, she's 22. He gives his address as Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Not really sure what he was doing, working, I guess, as a minister at that point, maybe a youth minister, some sort of.
Yeah. Yeah. If he's back from the war, he's working in the ministry probably.
Yeah, so it was probably short term in Pittsburgh because I couldn't put him there in Pittsburgh. Um, there are their signatures, Raymond L. Fenner, Anderson. Um, and then here, I believe this is your grandmother.
Yep.
Um, she was called Andy, I guess, for Anderson. Class vice president, class treasurer, Latin club, minstrels, Blue Devil staff, class play, operetta, Christmas pageant. Very busy, very busy. Glee club. So soon after they married, they went to Connecticut, probably known, a divinity school.
Mhm.
And he was also director of Camp Clare in nearby Lyme, Connecticut. And your grandmother was the business manager.
Huh.
Have you heard of Camp Clare?
I don't think so. I'll have to look
It
it
was
up.
the camp is still around.
Okay.
I think it's based in the church,
Okay.
open to everyone.
Interesting.
But says that she is a clinical psychologist at this point. Okay. So now they move. 1953, they were living in Long Island. He was an associate minister in Manhasset.
Yep.
This article just talks about some work he's doing with the youth, cleanup work, by making the teen gangs.
Wow. Yeah. With their dance records and hot rods.
Yeah, I was picturing all that leather jacket. Yeah. And
Mr. Fenner.
1956. But yeah, right. In about 1956, or around then, they moved to Fremont, California. And in 1959, moved to Detroit, where he was the pastor at the Congregational Church of Birmingham.
Mhm.
There they are welcoming him. Still there 2 years later. But just 7 years after they moved there, Gene passes away at the age of 40.
Mhm.
Say what from? Does not. But this was the family home.
Yep.
That they moved into not long before she passed away.
Mhm.
And a year and a half later, he remarries to Carol Cush Turner,
Yep.
1968. And then he kind of goes away from the newspaper and kind of fades from the record and goes to New Hampshire, Vermont.
Yep.
Um,
Yep. Live out a happy life up in New Hampshire. Yep. Fellows Falls, Fellows Balls. Yep.
okay, yeah. Walpole, yeah. So that's that. That's 94 slides.
That's incredible.
So
Man, this has been so cool.
your father.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep,
So
there's
that's
Dave, Sherry, Cheryl, Roz, Steve, Laurel Savage. That's funny. That's Lolly. I didn't realize her birth name was Laurel. I never knew that. Ellie and Lee. Yeah. Wow.
yes.
How cool. Man, this is amazing. Thank you so much.
Yeah, this
My
is
pleasure. Yeah. And
so
I'm
valuable
still
stuff.
working on another one for the Linds.
That's gonna be
But
really
then-
interesting because we know next to nothing about that.
It's fascinating. I've learned Danish, basically. I've translated a lot of documents from Danish
Oh my
to
gosh,
English.
that's so cool.
It's pretty cool. The names are amazing. The churches are old and still standing.
Really?
Wow.
Yeah, it's and the careers that they did are just interesting. Their houses, oh, it's really, really cool. I'm only at about 44 slides. But I
Still,
can show you this real quick.
yeah, sure. We'll take a look quick.
This, how do I, there, okay, my other screen. Can you see this screen now? I have two monitors, so
Oh yeah, look at that.
looking this way, but yeah, this is just neat. You're
Oh yeah, look at that. That's
in the newspaper, 85 guests at the Hotel Amityville.
Huh, yeah.
so wow. She had all of about 4 months to enjoy being married before she was pregnant with my mother. Look at
Oh wow, yeah,
that.
yeah. Yeah, that, so, yeah.
And this is so cool.
Yeah, I won't. I want to start, but I can't because I'm not done yet.
Yeah, we'll pick
That's
another time
fine.
for
We'll
it.
come back to
Yeah,
it.
Yeah, yeah.
fantastic. Yeah, it's my dad's 70th birthday actually.
Really
in a couple days,
awesome.
so this is gonna be really, really fun to get to show him.
Oh, good. Oh, I'm glad. Happy birthday.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
This is perfect timing.
Good, good. Yeah,
And
so
I-
I will.
I wanted to share a tweet with you.
Sure.
Drop it in the chat. I don't know if you saw this, it was trending today. But it says, I've come across a lot of good 17th and 18th century Quaker names over the past 3.5 years as I've worked on my thesis. Now that my thesis is done and submission is near, it's time to share more than 90 of the wildest early Quaker names I've found in alphabetical order. You should go through these because these are just the greatest names I've ever seen in my life.
Those are awesome.
Oh yeah, Love Beer,
Oh,
Silence Williams, Comfort Cripes. There's literally a guy named Gay Poop.
oh my God.
Yeah.
That's wow.
Israel Jelly. They're all really good. I figured you'd get a kick out of those.
That's all that's all. There's a early Oakwood related person. Not a funny, it's his name was Consider Merit.
Oh, that's amazing.
Just for a school principal, it's kind of
That's like a
Yeah.
verb name.
Sit
Yeah, I
there.
saw
Oh.
the principal of OSU when my grandfather was the alumni head was Novice Williams, I think. Yeah, which is like that's another good one.
Yeah, yeah. That's awesome. That's funny.
All right, Matt. Well, tack this session or these 3 mini sessions onto our hourly rate so we can make sure that we compensate you for this as well.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah, keep on kicking butt with the Lynn stuff. But this has been so cool. And please, I mean, this is unbelievably valuable and awesome. If you want us to spread the word, we'll tell everybody what a great job you did.
Sure.
Awesome.
Sure. Yes. And I will send you the presentation and also family register. I always do a family register,
Perfect.
which just lists everything in very boring genealogical format. But
Looking forward to it.
So,
that's yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Matt. I hope you the best of luck with the remainder of your Danish studies.
Thank
And,
you. Yes.
Yeah, and please, relax. There's no rush on the one for my mom. So if you have other stuff that has a tight deadline, please feel free to, go at your
All
leisure.
right.
All right.
Thank
Well,
you.
thanks so much,
All
Matt.
right.
I'll talk to you soon.
All right.
Bye.
See ya. Bye.